I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. In our continuing election coverage, we're having all the candidates in and giving them up to 30 minutes to discuss their platform. 30 minutes may seem daunting, but it'll go by pretty fast. And I understand you can actually start voting today in where did you say that you can actually start voting?
So Elections BC has set up offices across the province in every community. And as of today, you could walk in and vote in your riding. So if you just head over to Elections BC website right now, you could just find your riding and go vote.
Yeah, if you want to get it over with, or if you happen to be out of town.
Yeah,
if you happen to be out of town at that time, or if you just, if you already know what you're doing, but if you still want to listen to what people have to say, like right now, you're going to get to know Ashley.
Amazing.
In a lot more detail. Ashley Ramsay is running for the Kelowna Mission riding. She's running as independent after the BC United Party decided to pause their campaign with Kevin Falcon and kind of put a lot of the BC United candidates kind of in a lurch because they were kind of like, we talked to Stephen Johnson yesterday, kind of like blindsided by what was going on. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of you have decided to run as independents.
Yeah, it's super awesome. It's a historical moment in BC politics. And, the more and more we learn every day about the opportunities that this is going to present when we get down to the ledge, it's just, oh man, it is such an incredible opportunity for the communities that actually have an independent vetted BC United candidate. It's actually going to provide a lot of power for these communities.
Yeah, because if we look back at a previous government when Andrew Weaver, I got his name wrong last time when I Wilkinson, but Andrew Weaver,
everything.
Both of them were in politics. Andrew Weaver with the BC Greens was basically held the balance of power and had a lot of power over the NDP government at that time because he enabled them to form government. So we had a lot of sway into what was going on. So you're saying, independence, if there gets to be quite a few independent candidates, they could hold the balance of power, right?
Yeah, 100%. And just last night we were meeting as candidates and it was super interesting. Coralie Oakes, who's running up north, I think she's been in MLA for 2 or 3 terms now. Amazing MLA. But she was actually talking about how it's actually going to work in terms of question period, the resources we're going to get. We get, press resources, we get an office, we get a little bit more of a wage so we can use that towards resources that we need. We also get rotation into question period more often than those who are sitting in the party behind the first bench. So what that means is that it's actually quite an advantageous place to be sitting.
And you're not beholden to anybody.
Absolutely
You're actually
not.
only beholden to the constituents that elected
and
you,
what's beautiful about that,
Yeah.
You mentioned Steve Johnson. Like we chat all the time about, we riff on policy quite a lot, and we're like, you know what? Like maybe we take a little bit from the NDP and maybe a little bit from the BC Conservatives, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a beautiful place to be in since we have this spread of extremes, right?
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the areas that if you get elected, what are some of the areas that represent your area do you think that you would bring there and advocate for?
Nice. Thanks, Jim. That's amazing. Yeah. The Kelowna Mission Plan, right? So it's really beautiful because we can kind of create a policy around our riding, which is for the first time. I was talking about this yesterday. One of the biggest issues is affordability, home ownership, safety for families, and healthcare. For me, also business and the economy here. We had a really slow summer. Businesses are really struggling right now, specifically the restaurant industry and tourism in general. And then we, of course, have this massive problem with agriculture that is just absolutely devastating. So, wow, there are a lot of issues. Any policy that either of the parties put forward, in addition to the policies that we can consult with our constituents to get information about how they specifically want those policies, we will be supporting. But right now, for me, what I'm hearing on the doors is people can't afford to live right now. They are making a good wage, they're working hard, and they still can't afford it. So any kind of proposal around a tax cut for both businesses and individuals, the reason why we say businesses too is because businesses employ people. And if they're employing people, people can't get raises unless the business is successful. And if people are paying too much tax, maybe we give them a relief for a couple of years in a pilot program so that they can then get out and spend more money at these businesses, which then spreads the love, right? So, there's a lot to tackle, but,
Yeah, since the NDP's been in power, and I might get this number wrong, 7 years, I think it's over 12 new taxes that were introduced by the BC NDP, and I could have that number wrong. It is a very high number, though. A lot of new taxes, and it is kind of I hear from a lot of businesses it is kind of a depressing environment right now, even on the business side and on the personal side, with our personal GDP actually gone backwards in the last little while. Housing is unattainable for many people. Obviously, some of the health issues when we see healthcare, people access to doctors. There's lots of things to fix for sure. There's no
lots
shortage.
of things to fix.
And then one of the big concerns for the Okanagan for sure is wildfires, right? We face that all the time. And then I did interview Falcon, Rustad, and David Eby, and the forest minister, and the forestry companies, and they seem to think that the forestry companies, everybody seems to agree, the forestry companies aren't at the table to part of this solution. What would you do to advocate for forestry companies being involved in the solution?
Well, first of all, I think we need to form a round table in this industry. The first thing we need to do is open our ears. I don't think there's been a lot of listening, and the listening that is going on is not as let's just say embedded in the key players, right? So speaking to the key stakeholders in the industry, coming together now to look at where we're at, because so much has happened in the last few years and we're just not catching up. There hasn't been any attention. So for me to sit here and specifically say, let's do these 4 things, I think that's actually a disservice to the solution, because I think we actually need to start meeting with the stakeholders immediately. So a roundtable would be the first step. Then we can start listening to, okay, well, blocking and tackling in terms of like smallest to largest implemented issues, right? So working with First Nations, Indigenous, to work with the land so that we are trimming the forests and making sure that those forests have, natural barriers for forest fires to stop. How do we increase the access to the forestry roads so that we can actually increase access to fiber, right? Like right now it's being completely shut out, like let's save the trees, which yes, okay, but now we've got so much old growth forest that's actually creating these massive fires. And so
when you say old growth, though, you don't mean the Parksville old growth. You're talking about these forests get old, because it's a different type of forest here in the Okanagan and interior BC. These trees expire after about 100, 150 years, right? So it's been shown in Finland and stuff like that the younger forests are definitely more wildfire resilient.
Beautiful. Love it. Yeah.
Tourism, again, one of our mainstays for the Okanagan. Hurt fairly badly this year, likely due to a lot of the wildfires, but Renee Merrifield, I interviewed her, she said it had a lot to do with the Airbnb policy. Even the NDP candidate Loyal Wooldridge says that, and then I think he got his knuckles wrapped for it.
It's okay.
But he was advocating for a made in Kelowna solution. What's your position on that?
Yeah, I think both of those perspectives are, valuable. We sort of seem to have this mindset of let's test things out and see how it's going to work, to the detriment of, society. So NDP saying, well, we're just going to, wipe this all out and see how it goes. We're going to watch the numbers and watch the data. So now we're sort of far beyond watching the destruction. And, I think it requires an immediate change, and that is to either open up all Airbnb to the area, or specifically address certain areas within tourist dense areas, right? So that's
what Loyal was saying, like a
exactly,
made in Kelowna solution.
A made in Kelowna solution, because we do have some larger homes in the Upper Mission area, Lakeshore area, which are they're having big parties, right? And so that's not great for the neighborhood. It's not great for the neighbors. It's not great for safety, crime, all of those issues. So absolutely,
I think he was advocating for like the tourist zones that were already zoned by city council, like the Trustwell area where the aqua development is, that down by the waterscapes and stuff like that were already like zoned for that.
Love it. And you know what? This is the beautiful thing about an independent candidate, because guess what? I can actually work with both sides to, and then also get into the community and talk specifically boots on the ground to find the right solution and do the investigative work. And if the vote's required, then we will only do that after we've gotten enough information to prove that whatever vote's whatever's being put through is good to vote on for our community specifically. Yeah.
So I interviewed Airbnb just, I think on Friday. It hasn't gone up yet. They said that 80 to 90% of the stat, you can go watch that, most of the Airbnb owners own one unit. Whereas, when I was talking to the jobs minister, the NDP jobs minister, she said it was mostly corporations that owned all these Airbnbs. So, and that the reports that they were following, there's some confusion in there about who's BC Hotel Association has claimed some responsibility, or like that they had helped with this legislation. I talked to David Eby directly, and he said that's
Wow.
not true.
Wow.
So there's another study put out by the BC Hotel Association, which they're parroting as saying that this shows that it's working. Airbnb says they have a different report that shows the opposite. So
that's really interesting information. Again, people like you need to be on a roundtable so we go talking about this.
I think just, like allowing, and I asked if Airbnb was allowed to be at the table, and they weren't. So if it seems maybe a conflict of interest if somebody wins when they're providing information, you know what I mean? If there's a winner, and if it's corporate that's winning at the expense of like a small family that hadn't. There's even people in Kelowna that I know that bought a property that they could only afford it because they were going to Airbnb it for like 3 or 4 months, and then they would actually live in it for the rest of the time too. Right? So that's those are some of the situations that people are in. Right?
You know what? And actually, you bring that up a really good point. The corporations or businesses that own multi-units that are basically moving people in and out of them all the time. I mean, I've actually, because I used to travel a lot with the business that we owned, I was down in Miami and I showed up at an Airbnb and it wasn't what I was paying for. It wasn't the actual place. And so there's a lot of issues around that. And so, of course we need to look closer at all that.
The Landlord-Tenant Act seems to be slanted. I hear from a lot of landlords that they don't feel that it's fair. Wouldn't it be better to incentivize landlords to backstop them if they run into trouble where they can, almost like an insurance policy, like if they can't get rent, that the government would pay that rent? Or and I've heard people say, well, maybe to encourage new rentals on stream, like allow them to have the first year or second year like tax free or something like that, just to get more rental properties online.
Yeah, for sure. And, of course, we have a building issue where, builders can't even, build units right now and get them on the market because, the cost of building is so high and interest rates. And we have that issue as well. I think that's a situation where public-private collaborations, even pilot programs are amazing. Right? And so people forget that government doesn't have to sort of introduce a bill that's like permanent for 8 years. We can introduce pilot programs that incentivize specific issues in communities for a specific amount of time to, get things moving again or help with specific problems that are, occurring in the community. So yeah, 100%. I think again, this is back to the round table thing, collaboration, communication, understanding, learning. We need to get back to the table and start opening our ears again. And really getting in there and creating policy that might not be permanent and far sweeping, but maybe it's a little shorter. I'm always thinking because I'm an entrepreneur, right? And so you think of ideas that are quickly to be implemented and can be pivoted quickly as well. So
carbon tax, big issue, stage for Pierre Poilievre have actually been pushing that.
It all.
And it's interesting that, it was not a year ago that Pierre Poilievre was pushing on David Eby and David Eby said there's no chance they're going to change. All of a sudden, complete reversal on that. Now he's saying that he would remove the carbon tax if Pierre Poilievre removes it on a national level. I did an interview with Sonia First to Know with the BC Green Party, and she also said, I think she was one of the first to say too, it needs to be reworked. It needs to stop punishing the people. It should be on the wellhead, not on the individuals at the pump or at their their natural gas in their home. John Rustad's come out and said that. Kevin Falcon had a similar type thing to what Sonia was saying.
Absolutely.
You know what?
Because they're all opening their ears and we're finally having politicians that are listening to what's going on. And again, this is the voice of the community, speaking to the camera. You have a voice. Use it, right? Write in, complain, use your social. So I think, it's about time. It's been a few, a couple of years, three years of this. It's enough already. People are scorched and done. So
Stephen Gibault just came out and said that there's going to be another raise in April and there's no chance they're not going to do it. I mean, the polls say that they're if there was an election today, we wouldn't have the driver's seat. But it seems like a lot of Canadians have had enough, and they're raising their voice. And it's energy's in everything we do. Everything we do, we eat, whatever we do, and energy. And if you keep taxing energy, obviously it's going to cause some problems. I interviewed a Calgary economist and said that is the wrong way to go about it.
You know what? And you just touched on something. I'd love to kind of pull a thread on that in terms of the economy, right? So people are going, well, we're going to cut this. Well, how are we going to, we're removing all that revenue from the government. But hold on a minute. Then people suddenly have more money. So they're going to spend. And so it's and then as soon as we fire up our resource sector, that's going to create more of a tax base, right? Like getting rid of these, problems in the mining industry where they can't even get permits to get their projects off the ground, right? So it's a multi-complex issue. The carbon tax is one of the pieces, but if it hits you in your wallet, then you're going to actually use that money somewhere else, which is actually going to help our economy and generate more revenue because the businesses are going to pay more tax.
Yeah, that Calgary economist and asset manager out of Calgary says the biggest problem Canada has right now is we have the worst managers ever. Canada has the richest asset base, one of the richest in the world, and we just have really bad managers.
Yeah, and you know what? Like for everything that people said about Kevin and who he was a businessman at heart. He's an entrepreneur, and I think this province needs a real good hard reality check on how we're operating this province in terms of, are we operating this as a business model? Like, let's think about that for a minute, right? What's our budget? How are we going to stay in that budget? And how are we going to generate more revenue in different ways? If you think about a business who diversifies their, business model, right? They're getting money from different things. So we have agro-tourism and wineries now. Now they're having accommodation. They're diversifying the business model. We need to diversify our province to get this thing back on the rails. And
If you looked at BC from an aerial map from Google Earth and you looked down on BC, you would say, wow, that's a lot of trees.
Yeah, sure is.
That's a lot of trees. And forestry is our second largest industry, and everybody seems to think it's in shambles. And I keep going. We've done so many stories on forestry. Yeah. It could be such a driver for our economy again. And then they say that it's bad everywhere, but no, it's not, because if you look next door to Alberta, it's booming. Alberta is doing really well in forestry.
Totally.
BC has the highest stumpage costs in North America. So there needs to be some focus on forestry.
Again,
would you not agree?
We need a roundtable and we need a pilot program start like tomorrow, right? First thing we should be doing is getting our resource sector back on its feet. And I do feel like that is one of the most emergency issues is our economy, to be honest. Yes, affordability, all of these things that hit us right there in our little community stem from a thriving economy. And I do 100% support forestry and getting it back on its feet. We had a presentation from the Gorman family a few weeks ago when Kevin was up in July, and it was just amazing to look at the opportunity.
One of the better employers in the Valley, very storied family, right? The Gorman brothers.
Yeah.
Just want to check with Rama. What's the time check there for us? I just want to make sure that we're sticking on there. Okay.
Holy
we got lots of time yet, so. So how has it been? Like, obviously it's been kind of a roller coaster, right? You started with Kevin Falcon. Kevin Falcon convinced you to run.
Yeah.
And then you had a group of people that were very kind of close together, Stephen Johnson, yourself, and Dr. Humer and all that. And all of a sudden that fateful day, things kind of like, just like the wheels fell off the bus and a couple of moments. How are you keeping kind of like, that energy level up? Because obviously it must have been a bit of a, you seem pretty good right now though.
Yeah. I think we've sort of turned a corner this week in terms of momentum. Like donations are flying in and volunteers, and we're starting our Burma shaves down on Gordon. We put up a bunch of signs last night. So we're doing signs every night now, and people are really coming around and they get it, right? I think the more information that's been released from the Vancouver Sun and Richard Sussman and Keith Baldry and our big sort of political media force down in Victoria, really pumping the opportunity that this is presenting British Columbia in, I don't even know, since the beginning of time, we've got this amazing opportunity.
It's a historic election for sure.
So
a lot of things
crazy,
have happened that are unusual.
Yeah, and I think like really this week the energy shifted. We all met as a team last night. We had a blessing from one of the chiefs up in Haida Gwaii, which was really beautiful. One of the candidates brought him in, and the message was around sort of sticking together, helping each other, and sticking to our values in our heart. Politics typically doesn't really, it comes from the heart because you have to come from a deep place of service. This isn't easy work, right? You have to be able to stand up to a lot of, the culture is difficult.
So the NDP have had the wheel for 7 years.
Yeah.
They seem to think that they don't own a lot of the responsibility. They blame it on the previous party. They blame it on the BC United, saying that they inherited a big mess. But can you think of anything that's gotten better that you would credit them for, or do we really need a change in course here?
Our change in course is long overdue. It's hitting us everywhere, from the healthcare system with all of the health authorities we have that are overspending in each health authority, right down to the businesses who were told they had to raise minimum wage and, hit them right in the gut, without any kind of consultation, without any kind of, in exchange for, right? So, we could probably do another 20-minute segment of every single thing that has absolutely destroyed our community. Can I think of one thing off the top of my head sitting here? I actually can't. And that's not even like I try. And look, you know what? Stephen and I say to each other, if there's a good idea, yeah, we'll get behind a good idea. But are there any good ideas these days there?
But
No.
it seems to say like a lot of the stuff coming out from the NDP office right now is like they've just realized that they should fix something.
Yeah, well, everybody's trying to go right. They're trying to come center. Sorry, they're trying to all come to the center now because the center fell out of British Columbia on August 28th.
And that was Kevin Falcon's party, right? In the center,
100%.
Right?
It completely dropped. It was a complete slam on democracy in this province, and left everybody without.
Do you think the branding is part of that? Hurt
for
that?
sure.
Like just that.
Yeah.
Because I think John Rustad obviously riding the wave of Pierre Poilievre's popularity, right, with that conservative logo.
Every
and I think people... single
door, Jim. Every single door. Well, I'm voting for Poilievre. And then I just have to explain it. I mean, it was such an uphill battle with the brand. And to be really honest with the listeners and everybody, when I was called to this pathway into service in May to sort of join this team, I didn't really think much of it, right? I wasn't really aware of the branding, but I knew the BC Liberals, right? Because I've worked on a lot of boards under Christy Clark and Kevin, and Kevin's energy is amazing with his team and with the public, but for whatever reason, people just weren't really gravitating towards it, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the stars align for the Conservative Party because of Pierre Poilievre's popularity, and then just like it was kind of a couple of missteps from
100%.
Kevin Falcon on the branding that he did, and he didn't differentiate himself enough, because we even did an interview and we asked him, how are you different than the Conservatives? And there wasn't a lot, right? And I think, there seems to be, obviously, to win BC, you need to come to the middle, and that's why the NDP are coming to the middle. And I guess you've always been in the middle, though, right?
I think the one thing is our team we're actually doing a little bit of investigative work across the province, just to kind of give everybody a riding by riding breakdown of how the candidates are competing. Right. And if you look across the province, what the BC Conservatives did, and look, I'm not throwing any mud at anyone, I'm just saying, like, straight up, they've placed candidates in ridings that aren't from the ridings, or they don't live in the ridings, but they don't even not live in the ridings. They don't even live in the same area. So down on Pacific Rim, we have a riding where we have a BC Conservative from West Vancouver trying to represent the island. It's just a bit strange. So there's that, and then of course all the stuff that was coming out on.
Do you think
their
John's inexperience at leading a team like that is kind of showing, and just how the whole BC United thing was handled?
BC United was full of entrepreneurs, business people. Kevin is a businessman himself. He's an entrepreneur. He thinks with that kind of mindset. An entrepreneurial and a business mindset is very different from a politician. And, no disrespect to Mr. Rustad. I just think that he has a very different way of approaching, his management. I think that the management team is an important way to manage a company. You have to have people that have experience in all the different laneways and everything. And I think there's just a couple of missing pieces there for sure.
And then if we look at David Eby, do you think he's been kind of tone deaf to especially the interior and outside the Lower Mainland? Like, if we look at the health closures in our emergency rooms across the interior and into the north, some emergency room has been closed over 30 times. One emergency room over a 2-year period.
Yeah, and we had a pediatric ward issue just the last 2 weeks at KGH, where they were sending babies and kids down to other hospitals. So now it's hitting home. It's like right here in Kelowna now. And, to be honest, over the summer, Jim, like I was going, these communities are shutting down. It's never going to happen here. And it happened. Yeah. And then secondly to that, we were up here in July rallying around the farmers, trying to deal with this issue of not having a storage area for their fruit. And the Minister of Agriculture was nowhere to be found, and says, oh yeah, I know. I remember having those fruit in the summers when I was a young kid. And it's just like, wow, okay. Like, so just not here, or like they'll show up and shake hands and, do a press conference.
So there's a bunch of Surrey doctors got together to send a letter and asking for leadership change in health. We've reached out to Adrian Dix multiple times and asked for an interview. And at first he said they're going to look at a time, and then they said not available. And we're just like, not available today, not available ever. And they don't seem to want to be held accountable. I think if you want to be in power, you need to answer questions, especially to the media, because we're not asking for myself. We're asking for British Columbians, right? And if we're not held accountable, how can we accept those positions of power?
We need a complete shift in the way that we approach the management of provincial matters. It's like, listening to you, there's so many thoughts going through my head about we need to dramatically shift the mindset of the politicians. We need to be open, we need to listen, we need to answer the phone, we need to email people back. The voice of society is just getting louder and louder and louder because people are fed up. Yeah. And we have an old guard, and they are set in a different mindset that they should have someone responding to their calls or someone responding to their emails. And I get it. It's like drinking through a fire hose. Mm-hmm. But guess who's paying our salary? It's the taxpayers. And you know what? That's our job, to listen to them and be accountable to each and every one of them. And I don't know, I get pretty passionate about it because, I've been on the other side watching it from behind the scenes, working on these boards and just watching some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And it's like, you know what, we need to do much better.
So I've had the opportunity to interview the Premier, which is great. That was after multiple reach outs and challenges like this when I challenge them. Also the Forest Minister and also the Jobs Minister. But we've tried with Adrian Dix multiple times. And if we say healthcare is in a crisis, many, like Falcon said that, Rustad said that, many people have said that, yet they won't be held accountable. They won't answer questions. Is that the person that is likely that should be in charge if they will not answer questions?
Well, right. And, one of the policy areas that BC United really did, I thought did a really good job of is access to information for people, right? So, access to all of the information in the healthcare system that should be made public and non-redacted, right? In a variety of different issues that I'm hearing on the doors, right? So, yeah. And I think that's the first step in accountability is what are you hiding? Why can't we see the budgets? Why can't we see what you're saying, if it's true or not? Right. So, yeah.
Can you let me know when we have about 5 minutes left there, Rommel? Okay. So we're going to give you this time for you. And if you have anything you want to speak directly to the voters, just speak directly to the people.
Nice. Well, thanks for hanging in there today, guys and gals and all the different humans out there. We are working there for you. We're working hard for you out there. I've lived in this community for nearly 30 years, built a big company here, created lots of jobs and an economy here in a different sector that never existed. And, my call to service has, always been something really near and dear to my heart, and working, in the community to actually create change. And working on different boards. So I just want you all to know that I'm super passionate about this. It feels like a really deep calling for me to represent the community. And I know the community inside and out. Call to action would be to visit the website. So it's ashramsay.com, ASHRAMSAY, and sign up if you're in the Kelowna Mission area. Just check out some of the policies we have, thought process going on with, and just great to be here today.
And you're a family person. You have some kids. You have lots of dogs. I remember that. You have lots of people.
Yeah, we've got 2 kids, 16 and 10. It's a big part of my why. I think that, all the families out there that have kids.
How did you convince Todd to do this?
Yeah, we had to have a family meeting and really say, how is this going to work in the family? But everybody stood behind me, and the kids are really supportive.
Because it's a big commitment for sure, right? It's a large commitment, and I know that to do those things, and it's kind of like when I went coaching, when you look at something and say I could do better, right? And you have to step up and do some things, right?
Yeah, so. Thanks for acknowledging that, Jim. I think for all of us doing this, for all of the candidates, not just myself, that I'm, in support of everybody's journey. This isn't easy for any of us, no matter what side you're on. And so, a life of service is a really exciting and joyful thing, but it comes with a lot.
Final message from KelownaNow. You don't get the chance to vote very often. It's every 4 years for the most part. So make sure you use the most of it. Learn what you can about each candidate. hold them accountable, and make sure that they will be held accountable, and vote for the ones that will be held accountable, because it shouldn't be just every 4 years that they listen to you. They should be listening to you. I think Ronald Reagan said it best. Government should be scared of the people, not people scared of the government, right? So we need to make sure we exercise a vote. And if you have youngsters in your family that are eligible to vote, make sure they're out there to help them and educating them in the process, and understanding some of the candidates.
One really quick thing, the Elections BC office is down on Dolphin Avenue in Kelowna, and it is open right now, and it is open to the public 9 to 5, I believe. So you can go right in there and ask questions, register to vote, get your mail-in votes. If you're going snowbird, just get down there and check it out.
All right, thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
We don't just report the news, we live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. KelownaNow, local, independent. News you can trust.